everyone, it's my Chua and welcome back to my channel. It is the end of August, so you already know I am filming my August reading wrap-up video. And so for this month, I believe I read a total of 14 books and it was a pretty good reading month. I had stepped out of my comfort zone a little bit. I've introduced myself to some fantasy romance and things that I didn't think I would like, but I actually did really enjoy. And so let's jump right into the video and talk about all of the books I've read this month. First book I read this month was Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, and I've seen this book a few times being recommended, and it is actually a young adult book. And so for some reason I just didn't think it was gonna be a young adult book. I thought it was like in an adult setting, right? So I didn't expect to follow like high school students in this book, and not that there was anything wrong with it, I just didn't know that was what I signed up for when I picked up this book. Anyways, in this story we are following Liz and Wes, right? And they are actually neighbors. At the beginning of this book, Liz is actually very annoyed of Wes, right? They always bicker over things, they always fight over everything, and they are continuously fighting over this perfect parking spot outside of their homes. We're also introduced to Michael, right? And we find out that he is Liz's childhood crush. And so I believe this is like a small town romance because everybody knows everybody, right? So Michael had moved out of town for a few years and now he's returning as a senior at their school. At this point, Liz is like, I am gonna take my chances. This is the perfect opportunity for me to make him notice me, right? And how she does this is through Wes. And so I guess Wes and Michael are like best buddies or whatever. They've kept in contact throughout the years. And so she decides to suck it up and ask Wes for help. Wes is considering this, but he's like, what do I get out of this exchange? Like, what's in it for me? So Liz says, if you help me on this, then you will officially be able to claim the parking spot that we've been fighting over for so long. But of course, after spending so much time together, they both realize that what they've been wanting this whole time just might be right in front of their eyes, right? When I say this is the rom-com about rom-coms, I really mean it, because at the start of every chapter there's like this line or a quote from each different rom-com movie, right? And so that was pretty cool. I did really enjoy this one, but like I said, this one was YA, and so it wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but regardless, it was a very cute rom-com, and so I rated this one 3 stars. Next, I made the decision to read my very first fantasy romance, right? And so I started off strong and I started the ACOTAR series. Okay, so this is A Court of Thorns and Roses, and the second book is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is obviously a very popular series, so if you are a reader in general, you have obviously heard about this somewhere, right? Somewhere on social media. And so I did end up picking both of these books up on audio. In this series, we are following our main character, Freyra, right? And I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's such a cute name, but it's so hard to say. And so Freyra is a human girl, and she is obviously introduced to the Fae world. Freyra comes from a poverty-stricken background, right? And so her family is struggling to stay alive from starvation. One day while hunting in the woods, Freyra actually kills a wolf, right? And she realizes that this was actually a fairy, and it was just taking on a wolf form. So if you didn't know, a fairy is pretty much a bad version of a fairy, right? And so they're both supposedly different but alike in a lot of ways. And I don't know much about them. Like, this whole new world of Fae is also very new to me, and so I'm learning a lot in this book actually. When news gets out, Freyra is sought out by this fairy, right? Oh my god, this is so hard to say. Pretty much this other fairy comes to fetch her, right? And he pretty much threatens to murder her family and everything if she doesn't follow him back to their world, which is like Perithian or something like that. Perithian is not like foreign to mortals, right? Like the mortals know that the Faes exist, and even though that there is this wall separating the two worlds, they do come across each other from time to time. As the story goes on, we find out that the Fae who kidnapped Freyra is Tamlin, okay? And then we also know that he has this kind of sidekick or whatever called Lucian. And for some reason, instead of making her life like very torturous or whatever, they actually give her a lot of luxury items and protection as well. And so we do find out why they do this later down the road. As the story goes on, Freyra learns that there's so much more to the Fae world than she can ever imagine, right? Just that one little mistake of murdering a fairy has forever changed her fate, right? And so this first book was very, very slow actually in the first part of the book, right? And it's understandable because, you know, there's a whole lot of world building going on, a lot of explanations, but it quickly picks up during that second half of the book. I did find myself like confused with like a lot of things going on, but I do believe I picked up on most of the important things. Like this book is hella freaking thick. I am so glad I read this on audio, or I listened to this on audio, right? Because I don't think I would have gotten through it if I didn't. The second book is obviously a continuation of the first one, and so I won't elaborate because I don't want to spoil anything, but I promise you, you will want to pick it up right away after reading the first one. With that said, I did rate the first book a 5-star, and I want to say it's because the ending got me really curious on how things will play out, right? And so the second book, I ended up rating 4 stars. I actually really did like the second book, but I feel like at the end of the book, I was extremely drained and exhausted from this whole world. So I do think I'm gonna take a break from the series for a little bit and then continue on to book 3 whenever I feel like I'm ready for it. The next book I read was Confess by Colleen Hoover, and in this book we're following Auburn and Owen. At the beginning of the book, we see that Auburn had just lost somebody really important to her, right? And so a few years later, she is still trying to cope with this loss. After trying to find some words, she stumbles upon this help wanted sign outside of this art museum or whatever, and there she meets Owen and finds out that he is the owner of the place. Auburn is fascinated and amazed by the art pieces that Owen makes, right? And so she finds out that he actually creates them from anonymous secrets and confessions. Now, our two main characters obviously have secrets of their own, okay? So throughout the book, we do find out what they are, and we also find out that their lives were actually intertwined even before they met on this day. If you know Colleen Hoover, you know that her typical fashion is to throw in like a lot of twists in her stories, right? I believe in all of her books there's at least one twist. When Auburn and Owen's secrets were revealed, I was honestly very shocked. Like I didn't suspect anything at all, right? And so I did really like all of the twists and things did make a lot of sense. However, I found that this book was really cringy at times. And it was understandable because, you know, this was written like, I don't know, probably 2014, 15. I did end up rating this one 3 stars. Next up, I read The Friend Zoned and The Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. Now, in July, I actually read, Life's Too Short, right? So that is the 3rd book in this companion series. So I did end up reading all of the books kind of like out of order, right? Because I read the second one second and then the first one last. And so for the sake of this video, I will explain The Friend Zone first. In this book, we are following Kristen and Josh. So Kristen actually is in this long-term relationship with her current boyfriend, and he is currently deployed overseas, I believe. And we know that Kristen is this very blunt and feisty girl, right? She literally has no filter at all. A few pages in, we know that Kristen is helping her friend Sloane plan for her wedding, right? Sloane's wedding, okay? And so Sloane has this fiance named Brandon, and they are making wedding arrangements. So as Kristen is on her way to discuss wedding preparations for her best friend, her car is bumped into by a different car, right? And we find out that that is where Josh comes in. So right off the bat, that was kind of their meet cute, right? And so they are a little bit irritated with each other. Well, it's more like Kristen is irritated with Josh, and Josh just kind of finds her amusing, right? We then later find out that Josh is actually Brandon's best man. Okay, as they spend a lot of time together, they obviously do develop these feelings for each other, right? But they are obviously very cautious about crossing that line from being friends to something more. There is this conflict that comes into their relationship as well, right? But you're just gonna have to read this to find out what it is. I did enjoy this book. I rated this one 3 stars. So the Happy Ever After playlist. This is the second book, and I want to say it's gonna be a spoiler for the first book, okay? So if you haven't read this one yet, do skip this part if you don't want to get spoiled, because just introducing the characters will be a spoiler, okay? If you are still here, I am assuming that you want to get spoiled, okay? So in the Happy Ever After playlist, we are following Sloane. If you remember, Sloane was the best friend that was getting married to Brandon. And unfortunately, Brandon had passed away in the first book, okay? So we are following Sloane and her second chance at love in this second book. Anyways, at the beginning of this book, Sloane is stuck in this very unusual situation. One day she was driving, and for some reason there was this dog that just jumped right into her car, into her lap. She obviously has no idea what to do with the dog. Eventually she goes to this local vet, and she was able to find out that this dog did have a chip, and so she did get some contact information, right? But the thing is that she's been trying to contact the owner of this dog for like a solid 2 weeks, and without any luck, she just decides to keep the dog as her own. The owner of this dog happens to be Jason, and he was on a music tour during those 2 weeks that Sloane was trying to contact him, right? And so he is this well-known, famous musician, and when he returns to the States, he obviously wants his dog back. Through several texts back and forth, they both start to enjoy all of these little jokes that they both exchange, right? And so their relationship does bloom from there. I did end up liking this book more than the other two, right? And I just like the tropes in this book more, and I felt like the relationship was a little bit more realistic, right? And so I ended up rating this one 4 stars. Okay, the next book I read was Funny You Should Ask by Elissa Sussman, I believe, and I don't even know how to explain this book. I literally cannot remember a single thing that happened in this book, unfortunately, and I feel like I should have long DNF'd this book. I've seen people recommend it a few times, and so that's why I decided to pick it up, but it didn't leave any impression or anything like that. Other than that, I know I didn't like it, and I wasted my time listening to this book, right? Okay, so I did look up the synopsis in Goodreads, right? And this follows an interviewer and a famous actor, right? And so there's past and present timelines, and that's about it. I don't know, nothing very important. I feel like I'm being a little ruthless here, but I'm glad I didn't remember much about this book, because I need all of the storage space for other stories in my brain, right? And so this one was 1 star for me. Next, I picked up Taylor Jenkins Reid's After I Do. TJR is one of those authors that is very, very popular at the moment, right? And so I feel like I do enjoy most of her books, but they are not top tier for me. But I do find that I keep returning, and I keep wanting to try and find if there's going to be a hidden gem amongst her backlist, right? And so that's why I continue to read her stories. The only book I can say that I loved to the core was One True Loves, and so the rest of her books were alright. In this book, we are following what comes after tying the knot, what comes after all of the vows and all of the promises in a relationship. So we have this marriage in trouble relationship between Lauren and Ryan. I believe they've been together for like a solid 10 years, but eventually reached their breaking point. So they both do decide to separate for 1 year, right? In hopes to find out if they are truly meant to be together or not. During that 1 year, they are to live separately and have no communication with each other whatsoever, right? And they are also free to hook up with other people, free to be in different relationships as they desire. One thing I've noticed about TJR's writing is that she honestly doesn't really write romances, right? And so I know that's crazy to say, but I feel like in all of her books, romance is kind of like a sub-genre. So including this book, I feel like there was a whole lot of like self-discovery, right? If that makes sense. And so we are pretty much seeing our main character truly finding what she wants out of life and independently living for herself. Overall, I did really like the message of this story, and typical TJR, I feel like she has amazing quotes in all of her books, right, that are very, very memorable. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for, and like I said, I was kind of leaning more towards the romance side, but it was lacking in that department for me, so I ended up rating this one 3 stars. Next up, I know that you all are tired of me talking about this series, right? But once again, I've read Scarlet Angel and all the lights from the Mindf series. I promise I will finish off this series in September. I only have 1 book left, and if I am being very, very honest, I am stalling because I'm so afraid that this series is going to end and I won't know what to do with my life anymore. Alright, so there's not much to say anymore about this series, right? Other than that, you should definitely pick it up. But I will say the ending of book 4 just truly broke me, right? It was just so heartbreaking, and I'm obviously not gonna spoil anything, but I wasn't like crying or sobbing, but I was like dry heaving. I was like trying to breathe, but I just couldn't. It was just so painful, and it hurt so much to see what went down. I would sell my soul to read this for the first time again. This will forever be my favorite series of all time. Like, I put this shit on a different pedestal because it just deserves to be in a different freaking ranking from all of the other books, right? And so if that wasn't enough to convince you, I don't know what will. Just pick up this book. The next book I read was Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie, right? So I won't say much about this book because I did make a reading vlog on the first book, and I am in the middle of doing my second reading vlog on the second book, right? And so I will link that somewhere above. I believe it's gonna show up right here. Definitely do check it out if you're interested. This is a very, very popular series. It talks about Lily and Lo and their addictions, pretty much, right? So they are best friends. They have this fake dating kind of trope going on, and so if you're interested, definitely go pick it up. I did end up rating this one 4 stars. It was very enjoyable, and I can't wait to continue on with this series. Alright, I just have a few more books to go. The next book I picked up was The Pool Boy by Nikki Sloane, and this is a age gap, taboo, forbidden romance featuring a older woman and younger man. Earlier in the year, I did read the first book, which was The Doctor, right? And I didn't love that book, but it was a fine time still, and so this book is the second book in the series. Erica is our main lead, and she is in this happy marriage of 20 years, right? Or so she thought she was. On her 40-something birthday, I think it's like 42 or something, she decides to surprise her hardworking husband at work, right? So it is at his office, and it is after hours, right? But she does catch him cheating on her with his boss, okay? And his boss happens to be a man. Utterly shocked and very, very devastated by the reveal, she does eventually leave him for good. 8 or so months later, Erica is still very, very affected by the betrayal, right? And so she hasn't really built any courage to start dating again. One day, as she was laying naked beside her pool, she realizes that she is not alone, right? So Troy is there, and he is obviously her pool boy. So he makes this sudden appearance to clean her pool. Obviously shocked, they both pretend that nothing happened, right? But they can't deny the fact that they are attracted to each other and they need to relieve themselves. And so Erica hasn't been with anyone for a solid 8 months, and she has this high sex drive apparently. So they both decide to do stuff together. To make matters worse, this pool boy is actually Erica's best friend's son, okay? So obviously very, very taboo things going on. It was very hot, super, super spicy. This book was very insta-lust, and it did have other things going on, right? But I was looking for a quick and easy read, and it was exactly what I was looking for. I did end up rating this one 3 stars. So the last books I read this month was The Devil and the Devil's Advocate by Ashley Jade. And so this is a duet, right? And I don't know, I guess I don't even have words to describe this book. Like, I feel like I can't even really explain the plot or anything without giving things away. I did go into this book blind. The only reason why I picked it up was that both audiobooks were available on Scripps, right? And so when I go onto Goodreads, I see that the ratings were pretty high for this book. So I won't give out any context of this book, right? Because I do think you should go into this one completely blind, okay? But I will introduce some of the characters. So we have Eden, who is this 17-year-old girl who is turning 18 very, very soon, right? And she just recently lost her mother, okay? So now she is currently living with her stepfather, and his name is Kane, okay? So he is caring for Eden at this time. And our third character is Damien, okay? And I won't explain how he's involved, okay? Because I feel like that's a spoiler already. This book is definitely not for the faint of heart. The best way I can describe this is that it is very, very twisted, okay? We are following relationships going on. We follow some deaths. We follow forbidden stuff, and there are revenge plots. Pretty much this book was crazy, wild. It was very taboo, very forbidden. It was dark, very smutty, like all of the above pretty much, okay? But I was very, very fascinated with the story. I pretty much had to throw my morals and feminism out the window, right? And just took the story as it was and enjoyed it. And so that's all I'm gonna say about this book. Like I said, very, very twisted. It may get you very hot and bothered. It may be very disturbing at times. Even if you had no expectations whatsoever about this book, you will still be very surprised on how things played out, okay? So I absolutely loved it, and it was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I do not regret it at all. I do want to read more books like this. So I did end up rating both of these books 4 stars, and I will definitely be picking up more books from Ashley Jade going forward. So the lighting of my video probably changed drastically, right? Because I was using natural light on one side, and then I have a lamp on the other side. And this is my first time filming at home. You can see why I don't do this often. There's not really a good place to film, and I feel like we don't get enough natural light in our home. And so that's why I am in the car most of the time. That is all I have for this video. I am very, very happy with my reading goal, and I did enjoy a lot of the books I read this month. Again, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.